Hello and welcome to this session. So in this session we are going to be looking at whatever we are learning at the Open Fibre or the Kenya Fibre Data Summit, which was held on the 5th and the 6th of October 2023. On my screen here is the document that contained the agenda of the 2 days. I believe it was a very interactive session with so many delegates from countries within Africa, and also companies in Kenya and outside Kenya that had a lot to teach and just to lay a very good concept of how we are going to lay the fiber in Kenya. So I'll just go through the objectives of the summit, and then I'm going to just give a few takeaways from the meeting, whatever I understood from the meeting, and whatever I can maybe predict or give according to what was presented. So the main objective is that our current president, Dr. William Ruto, is planning to lay 100,000 kilometers of fiber within the 47 counties of Kenya, and this summit was held in order to first of all educate delegates and other regulatories in the country about fiber standards, which was presented by Mr. Steve Song from Mozilla. It was a 2-day workshop. I did not personally attend the workshop on the Open Fiber Data Standards, but Mr. Song said that he would send me the presentations to the slides from the workshop. So let us just go through whatever was the agenda. So fiber optic networks are essential infrastructure for modern economy, and we all know that fiber is the fastest of all cables in internet infrastructure, and as part the objective for the summit was to provide knowledge and awareness on open fiber data standards to the regulators within a variety member states and discuss it with rationale, use cases and benefits, to demonstrate the available tools developed under the open fiber data standards that can be used for data sharing on the fiber network infrastructure across the various countries, to provide knowledge on data structures and other aspects of data based on the open fiber data standards, and the approaches that can be used to realize a data-driven decision-making model for telecommunications infrastructure within respective countries, and to train respective regulators on the aspect of geographical information systems, that is GIS, and the necessary mapping that provides enhanced visual representation of the telecommunications infrastructure within a shared data ecosystem. So this was just to the workshop was just to provide knowledge to regulators, to demonstrate tools, to provide knowledge, and to basically give information to these regulators in these different countries, and how we could map the fiber infrastructure layout within the country. So I was not part of the workshop, so I believe that part of the summit passed me, but it's okay. I'm going to get the documents and go through them. Now let us come to the cake itself, which I attended, which was the Fiber Data Summit, Kenya Fiber Data Summit, and the objectives were to invite discussions or engagements on the opportunity of a shared data ecosystem that can foster innovative solutions to extend connectivity reach, to provide a platform for presentations on government projects and exchange on policy, regulatory initiatives on data sharing and data innovation, to provide a platform for this demonstration of use cases and practical examples on technological developments that we reap from a data shared ecosystem, and the level of digital skills needed to advance such technologies. The fourth objective was to demonstrate the various opportunities in the Industry 4.0, that is the fourth government in Kenya, technology pillars such as the Internet of Things, AI, cybersecurity, etc., etc., that can leapfrog digital innovation in Kenya and in other AFRAD member states. So that was the main objective. We had a few speakers coming in. In total, I think we had 6 panels. 6 panels for the 2 days. 3 days, 2 days. The first day 3 panels, the second day 3 panels, and then there was discussions in between tea breaks, in between sessions. I already posted the 2 videos to my WhatsApp group, the WhatsApp group where I share all the information that I deem relevant. I already shared the links, so kindly make sure you go through them. So let's get into the review, and I'll go through these as per the agendas and how they were planned out. On Thursday, from 8:45 to 11, the discussion was government initiatives on connectivity, data sharing, and governance. We had I will refer to my notes. We had an introduction from Mwakijele Jonathan, who was representing AFRAD, and in the first panel we had Fiona Asonga from TESPOC, we had Titus from CK, we had Adam from Huawei, and Dennis Sonoya from CK. So the discussion was government initiatives on connectivity, data sharing, and governance. And we basically talked a lot about data sharing, its benefits, its repercussions. It was a pretty open discussion, but and I believe that I learned a lot. They did not really go to the agendas as they were really put out, but they touched on those specific topics. Remember them talking a lot about infrastructure sharing and how infrastructure sharing would eventually lead to better data for exploitation and that kind of thing. They talked about mapping of these fiber cables. Most internet service providers claim that they have fiber cable from Mombasa to Nairobi. I remember Mr. Steven Song saying that some of this data is not accurate. They talked a lot, and their main objective was to have people understand the benefits of data sharing and shared infrastructure. More of the government initiatives came later on the second day. According to me, another person would have another perspective of whatever went on during that day, but those were the 2 main topics covered during the first session, which was infrastructure deployment, mapping, and data sharing. Those were the most talked about topics. And I remember when we were having a tree break, I actually had someone talk about data privacy. I invoked the conversation. I'll say that I invoked the conversation, and I would ask, what do you think is the state of what do you think about data sharing in general? And there were all these complaints and there were all these conversations about how data sharing has enabled indecent ad marketing, okay, in the case of telco providers, ISPs, whereby they collect your data and they are sharing it within others, or selling it to others, and you just keep on getting these ads, irrelevant messages on your either inbox or messages. And that was quite some discussion. We never really got to the bottom of it because of time. Then we went to the second panel, which was talking about digital economy, AI, and developments and policy. I'm going through my notes, so you'll bear with me so that I'm able to deliver in a very good manner here. So we had another panel, the second panel. But before the panel, I believe there was some presentation from the guy behind imla.io. He talked about the different applications of artificial intelligence and how we should embrace artificial intelligence to help us solve different problems in Africa. They usually talked about the Western mentality and how we should be avoiding it. But I believe we as Africans are not so much different from the Westerners. The way they should be treating their data, or the way their data is treated, should be the same way that data is treated in Africa, because in Africa the main problem is mainly on education on such issues, technology issues. People are not really concerned about what goes on around them. The cost of living sometimes pushes people too hard. They are more focused on their jobs than whatever is actually going around in the technology world. Whatever exploitation could go on the technology world. So I believe these are things we are going to talk about in my takeaways. But the guy talked about how to develop skills, how to absorb the skills in AI and such issues, which led to the second panel. I'm looking for the names of the people in the second panel. You'll forgive me for that. I'm very terrible at remembering names, but I'm sure I noted them down. So the second panel had Miriam from Paradigm. We had Daniel Gishuki, we had Nyagitari from Safaricom. That was the second panel, and the second panel was supposed to talk about the digital economy, AI developments, and policy. I believe Daniel Gishuki, who was the presenter from imla.io, really set the stage for the second discussion. And the main objectives of the second talk were research and assessments, sustainability of connectivity, change management strategies, and approaches to attain sustainability, assessment of the connectivity related issues and national digital skills, relevance of local content, assessing the ability to pay for connectivity. Those were some of the things they were talking about. And when they reached to AI development, we were talking about inclusion of people into the AI, because AI is very prevalent nowadays. It's being used across multiple sectors, videography, just agriculture, banking, content creation, talk any field. AI is a very general technology, can be used across multiple fields, as I've said. But when used the wrong way, then I think it will bring an issue. I remember the issue of ChatGPT was raised bad, whereby they were saying that kids nowadays don't want to think. As long as they have internet connection, they would just result whenever they're given assignments, whenever they are told to reason out on something, don't reason it out, they just go consult the AI and it gives them a text. Personally, I believe in the use of specific AI, that is generative AI. It's a very good what would I call it? It's a very good advancement in technology, and it will really help in development of code, text, and other areas, because some time back it used to take someone so long to actually come up with code, but nowadays you can have the code in 5 minutes, in seconds even. You just have to know whatever you are really looking for. Just type it in and the generative AI will take care of you. And that was an issue that was raised in that discussion. Actually, we had a very good discussion in the second session. Yes, degenerative thinking, that is what is affecting children nowadays. They don't want to think, they want to just consult technology, that is generative AI, to do assignments for them. which is quite good. It's good that they're able to use the tools available, because if they are available, why not use them? They talk about sustainability. Sustainability was brought up to actually evaluate the level of readiness of adopting these kinds of technology. Okay, they were looking at how sustainable is it, how manageable is it. Okay, and those were some of the questions that were raised in that specific meeting. I'll quickly move on to the next panel, which was talking. Since it's a lot, I almost took a whole book writing. It is quite okay. I remember the issue of not achieving all this that we are talking about, that is AI, connectivity. We could not talk about whenever you raised an issue on data sharing, AI, the question would always go back and say that we would not be talking about this if we are not connected. And I think we need to talk about it, because it does not mean that people are not connected. We have 3G network across the country. That means the country is well connected. People are accessing the internet. If data sharing was an issue, then it should have been an issue that should have been identified way earlier, because people are already using the internet. We cannot ignore the fact that there are some people who are already connected and using the internet, and it is not in one region, it's across the whole country. We might not have 4G or 5G or fiber networks into these specific counties, but 3G connectivity is quite good. If you remember, we did our elections last year, 2022, and the 3G network was actually the one being used to relay the results from polling. The 3G network was actually the one being used to relay results to the tallying centers, and that gives surety that 3G network is there, it's working, and people are already connected to the internet. The fiber part of it comes in to just make sure that we have appropriate speeds. People are better connected. You don't have to go buy a bundle like we do nowadays. You just have to pay for a subscription, I believe a monthly subscription to the internet service provider, and you have internet for the whole month, unlike nowadays. So you have to buy a data bundle from an ISP, and the issue of limited bandwidth, I believe that is the actual issue here. So I'll move on to the next panel, and you'll forgive me for taking time to go through my notes, but I believe I need to go through them so that I can actually deliver what was actually talked about in the summit. So in the third day, this was in the third panel, or the third discussion of the first day. There was actually an open platform, and if you actually watched the video that I posted, I actually was the one who raised the issue. There was Leonard Mapele from Afralty who introduced the session. He told us what to think about, and he gave an open platform for anyone who was ready to raise an issue or a question. And I actually asked the question of AI and data sharing. I got into details saying that AI is quite a general technology. We can use it across multiple platforms, and it would actually benefit us to use AI across platforms, because things would be done in a much faster way, unlike when you have to go through records as a human. Computers, I believe, are very good at automating processes, though they are very bad at context. But AI would actually bring about development. If you look at the first world countries, Germany, USA, the UK, AI has been used across multiple platforms, and actually a lot of research is going into it to ensure that AI is maximally utilized in this age and era, because as of now, what we would be actually talking about is the continued development of AI across multiple platforms. It's never going to go back. The research is always going to go larger and larger, and we are either going to get benefits from the AI research or repercussions from the same. But I believe that AI generally can help build a very good economy, a digital economy. Now, in the third session, as I said, I raised the question about AI and data sharing and data privacy, because I believe that even when we have access to the internet, we have the right to access the internet privately, without monitoring, without surveillance, because technology then brings about what we call as total surveillance. Imagine you're walking around with your phone, and the phone is a very good surveillance tool. You have all the devices you need. You have a camera, you have listening devices, you have recording devices. I mean, it's quite crazy when it gets to some of these things when it comes to data sharing. And when I raised that question, if you watched that specific video, Daniel Sonoya from CAK actually came in and answered my question. He actually said that there was a study in 2016 that was around the same issues, and recommendations were done, but they have not been actually implemented. What they were actually looking at right now, if I'm remembering correctly, is on the things about infrastructure sharing. He actually said that if we were going to deal with internet privacy, we would come to deal with it in 2028. I took that very seriously, because data privacy, internet privacy is quite a large issue, but people do not yet understand it, because you only get to understand it when it happens to you, when your data is leaked as a company or as an individual. The aftermath after data leakage or being hacked, or something happens due to surveillance, due to the technology that you have, you only get to understand some of these things when it actually happens to you. But anyways, we'll get to that when we come to the takeaways of the whole summit. So that was the general talk of the first day. We had a very good discussions on that day. I specifically learned a lot. I might not be able to compress it and give it out in terms of video right here, right now. You need to actually go through the talks that were actually there to get your own perspective of things. So that was my take on the first day. And on the 6th, the second day, Friday the 6th, October 6th, we had another great day with 3 panels. The first panel was supposed to talk about Internet Resiliency Index, community networks, digital skills and capacity. So actually the first day was introducing fiber optics, the benefits of fiber optics that would come, AI, Internet of Things, and all that stuff, cybersecurity, you know. And the second day, according to my view, was actually viewing on ways how we would actually adopt the fiber optics in Kenya. They are already there, but not extended quite well enough. So the second day was actually looking at how we would get into details of adopting the fiber optics networks in the country. To introduce the day was Henry Mugabe from Uganda. He talked about infrastructure sharing again, broadband access, digital inclusion, local networks initiative, community networks, all that. He talked about all that, and he did a very good introduction on the second day. And we had a presentation from the ICT authority on the plan of actually laying out the fiber cable to the 47 counties to ensure that we have connectivity. I have not yet mentioned that we already have 5,000 public Wi-Fi hotspots already available in Kenya, and they were planning to extend the number to 25,000 across the 47 counties. So it's like 5 times whatever is already there, and this is planned to be done by the year 2027. So I believe the time is quite good. We're in 2023 right now, according to when you're going to watch this video. And I believe that was quite a nice plan. And what we actually talked about was the stages of deep development, that is from identification, funding, maintenance, infrastructure deployment, and then later on pooling of resources. Resources. We had someone from the community networks, how they were actually trying to make sure that we had this infrastructure deployed and effectively used is through community networks. And community networks is whereby you come up as a group, you are funded to either get the infrastructure or improve on your infrastructure, and sort of manage the infrastructure through community networks. They were talking about, we already have like 11 of them registered, and their target was 100 community networks. I actually met a guy from Tanda community network. We are going to have very nice talks with the guy. And when they were talking about community networks, we talked about community network enablers. How would we actually enable these community networks to ensure that the connectivity is effective? So number one was through licensing. If you are going to be a community network, then you need to be licensed. The second thing is that you need to have local technical capabilities in terms of infrastructure, trained people, human resources. Then the third enabler would be access to financing in your day-to-day operations, maintenance, and all that stuff. Then the fourth enabler would be aspect to spectrum. We all know that when it comes to fiber cables, we divide the different networks through spectrum. The light is divided, you get the concept of a rainbow. So take the rainbow as a fiber optic cable. We would have 7 different networks. That is the way fiber cables work, by the way. So there was the aspect of spectrum licensing, making sure that each spectrum allocated to a certain community network is licensed. And the fifth enabler would be access to backhaul. I do not quite understand that point clearly, but the fifth enabler would be access to backhaul. And by the way, if you have any comments about what I'm talking about, kindly you can bring your comments, critiques, recommendations on my comment section. Try to be active so that we get this thing going. So those were the enablers of community networks. On the licensing part, the licensing authority would be Communications Authority of Kenya. So if you have a community network that you need to register, you register it with the Communications Authority of Kenya with 1,000 shillings as the registration fee, 5,000 as the annual operation fee, and that would be cover the licensing part of the community networks. When we are talking about capacity building in community networks, we are talking about structured membership of these specific community networks and training, so that we can get human resources to actually run the infrastructure that would be later on deployed. And we talked about generation of local content and sustainability. I remember I've just talked about sustainability, is how ready are we to adopt and maintain the connectivity. And in the third enabler, which is access to capital, we talked about the USF. It's a funding strategy, the USF strategy 2022 to 2026. which is a strategy to actually fund these community networks to enable network operations, expansion, and sustainability of the infrastructure that is going to be laid after the fiber network or the fiber cables are laid out to the 47 counties of Kenya. In capacity building, to enable all these community networks, people need to be educated about these things, how to use them, how to actually utilize them in a good way, and making sure that we are not misusing this infrastructure. And to cover this, they actually talked about how would cover personal costs for trainers, stipends for trainers, travel and accommodation for trainers, consultation fees for trainers, and developing a training toolkit, sort of a book that you would give to actually guide on how to use this infrastructure. That was the first talk, and we had the reflections on the lessons learned from the already existing 11 community networks. We have ecosystem partnership, building local capacities, dialogue and collaborations with regulators and policymakers to ensure that this infrastructure is used in the right way, and unlocking the USF, which is the funding strategy for enabling the community networks. Those were some of the issues that we talked about in the first session, and we later on went for a break. We had the second panel coming, and in the second panel we were looking at resilience. Okay. We were looking at resilience. I believe what I'm seeing here, I have already talked about it. There was a presentation from Kevin Shege, and he was talking about resilience. And when you're talking about resilience, a resilient internet connection is the one that maintains an acceptable level of service in the face of faults and challenges in the normal operations. So actually, if we were to get connected, how would the networks actually handle when we were in normal operating mode and we face challenges in between operation, in case there is a breakage of fiber cables? How would it handle? That is what we are talking about, the resilience. And they came up with a framework which is named MIRA to actually measure the resilience of an internet connectivity. In the measuring of the resilience, they came up with an index or indicators of a resilient internet connection. They were talking about the infrastructure that you deploy. You must have infrastructure. It must be performing. We must have enabling technologies and a local ecosystem and market readiness for the internet resilient connections, because actually it comes at a cost, and I believe that is why we were the issue of community networks was coming up, so that this resilience would actually be measured by the people who are operating the different community networks in the 47 counties of the country. For more information, I believe you need to actually go through the talk itself. I did post the videos in my WhatsApp group where I post all this stuff, and they were talking of Iceland and Switzerland actually leading in the internet resilience across the world. They have the most stable internet connections, that is Iceland and Switzerland. He actually gave a full list of countries according to their internet resilience, and kindly go through the talk in the video for a very nice insight on these topics. It will take quite some time because the first video is about 5 hours, the second one is close to 7 hours, so yeah, take the time, it's worth it, I tell you. In the second talk, we also had a map of the actual infrastructure that is across the country in terms of TV white spaces, radio signals, and internet connections that we have. They give a very nice presentation on the same, and if you want to see the actual map of whatever we have as infrastructure in Kenya in terms of communication, then they give us a website to go through, which is PALS at ISOC, that is Internet Society of Kenya.org. That is where the map of whatever infrastructure that we have in Kenya is actually laid out. On the third panel, we were talking about on the second panel, pardon me, we were talking about research and innovation, but actually that is not what we talked about. We had from in the second session of the second day, we had Dr. Oredo from the University of Nairobi talking about the digital economy, the enablers of digital economy, and the four-layered model of the digital economy in terms of the network elements, the network itself, the applications, and the consumers. So we had a very nice talk on that. If I believe that you need to actually go through the talk to actually understand or get your own perspective of whatever Dr. Oredo talked about. We later had a conversation with a panel led by Winnie Akoko. We had Dr. Dorothy. We had Vera from Kenya School of Government, and I believe it was a very nice conversation. We also had the trainer of fiber optics at Frailty on the same panel, and what we're actually talking about is why we need the technical skills when it comes to such innovations, and what would be the strategy to achieve these technical skills to ensure that we are able to actually operate before operation, the deployment, operation, and maintenance, error handling of this fiber network that is going to be laid out. We talked about industry responsive programs, that is TVET institutions, universities providing this kind of knowledge to learners. But I believe there's something we did not cover, though it was not at my mind at that time. My actual question would be, how faster would we integrate getting of these technical skills in our institutions? I am now aware that we are having, should be the last group doing the KCPE. So actually, how fast would we integrate the technical skills to these children, so that when they are reaching their teenage and their 20s, they already understand what we are already talking about. The disadvantage with us Africans is that we are exposed to some of these things when we are way older. For example, when it comes to gadgets, the people in the Western community, that is the Western countries, Europe, USA, yeah, those people are actually introduced to these things when they were little kids, coding, uh, game development, yeah, and as they grew up with these technologies, they're able to understand them way better than a person who would actually be introduced to the technologies when they were in their late teens or 20s. So that is a question that I would be having. So if you have any comments, make sure that you're able to note them down on my comment section. We talked about industry responsive programs and how they would actually help us attain this goal. They talked about how we review academic programs after 5 years. Some even talked about the Kenya School of Government talked about reviewing their systems, all their academic programs after three years. And we were looking at how would they access these skills, have them in diverse ways, make sure that all people are included, and have programs, that is micro learning programs, a 2-hour session or a 1-hour session with the details or courses that one can just learn and gain knowledge on some of these issues. So those were some of the things that came up. We were also talking about academic integrity, because most people are not in the industry are not actually well, I would say as people with integrity, academic integrity. I'm not focusing on anyone in specific, but I believe that our industry has a lot of people who are not actually academically integrating, and those are some of the things that we actually came up with. We also talked about some workshops, having workshops to enable people to learn about these technologies and get to understand how we would actually exploit them to make sure that we are reaping benefits of them. So I talked about Dr. Redo. We'll now come to the third session, or the third talk that we had on the second day, and we are talking about the priorities of the Kenyan government when it comes to internet connectivity, and how would what are the barriers to this digital accessibility. So the priorities of the Kenyan government in terms of connectivity is 100% 3G and 4G networks, which I believe in terms of 3G we have achieved as a country. 4G is still continuing. 5G is already there in Nairobi. We have 5.2G already coming up. Government, the priorities of the government, the second one was government digitization in terms of learning, legislation, commerce, agriculture, and all the sectors that make up government. Those were that is the second priority of the government in terms of internet connectivity. We have what we call as ICT innovation hubs, and the target is to have 290 hubs or innovation hubs per constituency, to ensure that we are covering the whole country. The third, which brought up this whole conversation, was the public Wi-Fi hotspots. I already said that Kenya has deployed 5,000 public Wi-Fi. I actually said that Kenya has deployed 5,000 public Wi-Fi hotspots across the country, and they are planning to expand that to 25,000 public Wi-Fi hotspots around the country. And on the fifth issue was actually cybersecurity. How how safe are we actually when we are deploying this kind of technology? And I believe in cybersecurity we also talk about resilience, which is actually how much can we actually still be up when we have faults and errors in terms of operations. In terms of the barriers of digital accessibility, or the priorities to the government, we noted that unaffordability, unavailability, and unreliable internet connection was one of the issues, which is going to be solved by laying out the fiber connections. Inappropriate digital content. People seem to be more of entertainment oriented when it comes to the internet, which is not supposed to be the case, but it's actually what is happening. So inappropriate digital content, digital literacy. I remember when Dr. Oredo was talking, he talked about technology and understanding how it actually works. The technology does not matter because you don't see it when you are using it each and every day. When you're using your gadget, you're not seeing those waves being sent out. You're not seeing the data in transit. We don't actually see that. But actually understanding what happens behind the scenes is actually what is most important. And I believe this is why digital literacy comes in, because people are not aware of what actually goes on. When you use your phone, you're not actually concerned on how it works. You're actually concerned on has it worked or has it not worked for me. So I believe that was a very good issue to come up with. And the fourth issue was the issue of unaffordable devices. In some countries, these devices are given out on loans. I believe Safaricom has come with that initiative where people can just go get a device and you're able to pay for it throughout the years. It's a good strategy, but kind of pressing people at some point, but it's okay. But the issue of unaffordable devices was actually coming up. We also talked about some policies and the state of supply and demand when it comes to digital accessibility. So that was what we covered in that specific talk. We also talked about the government transformational digital agenda to offer trust and resilience, content and services, connectivity, digital skills, knowledge on emerging technologies, and systematic enhancements when it comes to the connections. We talked about the different sectors that could be used in terms of sharing spectrum. For example, we could have one spectrum mainly for manufacturers, another one for communication, another one for education, another one for healthcare, another one for agriculture, and another one dedicated to smart cities. So those were some of the issues, but I would actually advise that you go through the talk itself to get your own perspective. Remember, this is my own perspective according to what I noted down and what I actually thought was important to actually come and give to you as my viewers. We talked about data sharing again on the second day. not data sharing but spectrum sharing, and they were talking about an approach to drive spectrum sharing. One which is advocacy and policy recommendations, coming up with policies that actually control the spectrum sharing. Capacity building and tech assistance, we talked about that when we were talking about community networks. International cooperation, where countries come in to actually share spectrums and actually share information about how the spectrum is being used and how it's actually being utilized. We talked about research and analysis. Doing frequent researches will actually help us advance in technology, and public awareness on some of these technologies and the issues that come with these technologies. So that was that talk. We talked about a repository where the spectrum sharing would actually be shared, which is the repository.ca.go.ke, is where you find all these approach to drive spectrum sharing done by EGA Consultancy, which is monitoring stations on spectrum management. I believe fair spectrum sharing would actually be a good idea to ensure that there is equal chances or opportunities to industries across the country. To the final talk of the summit, we had a talk from Mutembei Kariuki from Switzerland. He gave a very nice presentation on digital tax, AI, and the way forward. We actually said that Kenya is not badly off because it's actually trying to emulate other countries that are already implementing this kind of digital taxes. We had talks on France on the 3% digital tax services, India 2% equalization levy, the UK have 2% digital service tax, Indonesia have their own VAT approach on digital tax, and in Kenya we introduced the 1.5% tax on digital services. So that was the main topic of this specific meeting or talk. We talked of the impact of AI on overview in terms of job market and skill development. Remember when we were talking about degenerative thinking, children do not want to think on their own, and the job market actually talks about AI actually taking up jobs that are occupied by humans, where the question of will AI actually come to replace humans is quite a tough question, but I believe you're way far from that. But it is it may finally come, but we are way far from that. Legislation when it comes to AI, we had the OECD 020 initiative framework that provided the way forward to harmonize, support AI, bring in tax holidays for content creators and that kind of issue. And we actually talked a lot around the issues of digital tax and the implications that comes with, and how the government would actually ensure that it's able to make the tax effective. Remember, the government might not have information on all people who are offering this digital tax, so they were actually talking about how the government would actually be in a position to capture all these digital services, and I believe that will come with the digitization of the government. Those were some of the issues raised by Mutembei, a very nice guy. I actually got to meet him on that specific day. And then we had another panel from Caroline, an advocate in cybersecurity, and he had Charles from Deloitte, which is a UK-based tax. We had the fourth and the final panel on the day, which was led by Caroline, an advocate in cybersecurity. We had Charles from Deloitte and a representative from the Kenya Bankers Association, and we were talking about the difference between the traditional way of taxing and the e-platforms, how we would actually get to tax digital services when it comes to the digital services that are offered within certain borders. We were comparing the two, and the objective was actually to come up with a level playing field in the taxation field, to ensure that the government gets it right, and the people or the content creators actually get their rights too, and they would not feel as oppressed. Okay. We talked about standardization when it comes to digital services. We talked about competition when it comes to these digital services, and from that I was able to get that KRA is actually developing a new system to enable that digital services are equalized across the country, and this would help avail more data on digital services and expand the tax base of the government when it comes to the digital tax. Okay, expand the base on digital tax collection. And that was actually it for the 2 days. It might seem that I have skipped a lot of these talks that we are having in between. That is why I recommend that you watch the 2 videos that I posted, so that you get your own perspective of things and the state of things as of 2023 when it comes to fiber connectivity, internet connections, and the general layout of infrastructure when it comes to communication in terms of Kenya. I believe it was a very insightful summit. I actually enjoyed the 2 days. I met a lot of people, we had great conversations, and I would like to thank all of you, if at all you're going to be watching. If we met and we had a conversation, I actually appreciate, because I actually learned a lot from the 2 days. Let me now come to my takeaways. What I would actually be focused on when it comes to the 2 days talks. What actually came to my mind after we had the talks, and my main issue, because we have all different issues, but my main issue comes when it comes to internet privacy and building a private internet, because the internet has become a very good source of information. If I actually want to find out more about a person, I don't have to go and ask them. All I need to go is to go do proper open source intelligence, and you'll be able to get a very good view of that person, or very good information about that person. So this brings about the issue of mass surveillance, how data would be weaponized, how data would be censored, because these are actually things that are happening across the globe. Take an example of North Korea. North Korea, those people have been censored from information. The government withholds all the information. They only give you what is relevant, or what the government terms to be relevant. And as we all know, the government is it's effective, but it does not actually cover everyone's needs. That is something that we need to actually acknowledge. And sometimes governments could use this data to actually bring out about data weaponization, data censorship, and those are very scary things to talk about. If you look at Switzerland is one of the most places where privacy is highly regarded. And the actual question would be, do you believe in privacy? How significant do you feel when you're using the internet? Because you are the person who's going to write the history of this internet that we're using right now. If data is going to be collected and maybe used in a wrong way, because either we did it unknowingly, we shared the data unknowingly, or there was surveillance on citizens and actually monitoring their behaviors, their sentiments on certain issues. Technology can be used for different reasons, and not all of them are actually positive reasons. Some are very negative reasons, where we have things like data weaponization and censorship. Those are not things that citizens, especially in a democratic country, would enjoy. Imagine if someone, and I know actually it's happening right now, that someone has intelligence on whatever Kenyans are viewing each and every day, whatever Kenyans are buying each and every day, whatever Kenyans are saying each and every day. There's someone who collects that information, puts it, and gives it in terms of graphs. This is what we have, this is what we have in terms of these topics and these topics. I believe we need to actually come up with ways and actually educate people on ways to access internet in a very private way, to make sure that such issues of data weaponization and censorship do not actually happen, or do not actually come to happen. And if they do, because it might take quite some time. You had the guy from Communications Authority of Kenya saying that if they were going to actually deal with issues of data privacy, it would come at 2028. That is very scary for a person in such an authority to be talking about, because he's an insider. He actually gave out what Communications Authority is supposed to relay. I believe that that is an issue that we need to actually address. It is not that they are not ready to address it. It's just that I believe that they have other issues to first deal with, like for example connectivity. Okay, they have to make sure everyone is connected first through fiber cables before we start actually talking about these things. But if we would avoid actually sharing so much about ourselves when it comes to the internet, issues of data censorship and data weaponization would not actually be there. And when I'm talking about censorship, I'm talking about a certain organization or a state withholding information, saying that this information can only be accessible to certain people. Information should be free. That is what I'm talking about. That is the concept of data censorship. I'm talking about data weaponization, so whereby we have people actually collecting data on a large group of people and using that data to actually use it in inappropriate ways. Maybe sell it to other countries for exploitation. Maybe use it for certain political agendas. And this is quite crazy. I remember when this guy from IMLA.io, I believe his name is Daniel Gishuki, he actually talked about when we changed from a free to air to this digital broadcasting, right? most people were not watching televisions. They were not watching televisions. When digital broadcasting came, there was introduction of TVs, radio stations that are speaking in local languages, yeah, and this actually enabled people to absorb information in a much different way. uh, Grandmothers, grandparents who are not watching television are now watching television throughout. People who are not understanding what these things were saying, or the television stations were saying, it has now been brought in their language. They're able to understand, so they're able to participate in the conversation. So I believe it is the same when it comes to technology. We need to include all people when it comes to technology and the technology related issues, so that we avoid some of these issues before they even arise, because it would be very unfortunate when it comes to issues of data censorship, weaponization, and all that stuff. So that is an issue I really wanted to cover, about data censorship and weaponization. And personally, as networking IT, David from networking IT, I would personally take that responsibility of making sure that this information is spread out, and this is why we have initiatives like this of creating a channel where we get to talk about these issues. I don't know when you're going to be watching this video. Right now my viewers are quite a small number. I believe the number will grow as time goes by, but this is the issue that we need to actually address when it comes to such issues. Otherwise, the Kenya Fibre Data Summit was a very insightful event. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I thank all the facilitators from AFRALT, the member states of AFRALT, Communications Authority of Kenya, for organizing such a wonderful event. Very insightful, very educative and informative when it comes to issues on connectivity and fiber optics. That's it for all for now. I believe we're going to be having more discussions as the time goes by. I felt that I should address the Kenya Fiber Data Summit and what I actually got from it. I believe it's a good trend. So thank you for watching me. Thank you for actually making the time to listen to what I had to say, and see you in the next video. Peace.